Is buy-to-let finally dead? Interest rates going up, high inflation, the media report all this, people pick up newspapers and they decide they're not going to invest in property by headlines they see on a newspaper. Really important you don't base your investment decisions based on the front page of a newspaper, but so many people do, whether it's subconsciously or what have you. In this video I want to give you some context. I want to look at buy-to-let in general in today's market, June 2023, and make sure we have a look at really what's going on and if buy-to-let really is dead or not. So let's have a look at some of the detail around this and get some kind of context. Let's talk about inflation, the cost of goods and services. So food you put in your shopping basket, the price you're paying for that is linked to inflation. So the cost of goods and services are going up, people have more and more cash available, and it's just pushing up the costs artificially of goods and services. So they shouldn't really be at the level they're at the moment, and currently the reported inflation is 8.6 taken as a yearly percentage. It has been into double digits, as we know, and they've tried to bring it under control, and they're doing that by raising interest rates. So it has fallen, but it's stalling at about 8.6% at the moment. So they're probably going to have to put interest rates up just once or twice just to make sure they really kill this high inflation and bring it back under control to stop people spending as much money. And that's one of the main problems at the moment. People have a lot of disposable cash, lots of money about, and people are going out there and they're spending it on all these things. It's pushing up these costs. The next thing is interest rates. Now they're currently at 5% based on last week's interest rate rise. And people say, oh, interest rates are really high right now, I'm not going to invest in property. Well, if you compare that to the 1980s, then they were over 15%. So they're not high compared to that. So you've got to compare it to something. So anyone can say 5% expensive, anyone can say 1% or 2% or 10% expensive. Well, you've got to compare it to something for it to be expensive. Now what I do is, we're not, and this is why we're doing this video, we're not comparing it to anything like the 80s. We want today's investment returns. What can we get for our money today? If I take it out of the bank, put it into property, what kind of return am I going to get on it? Am I going to get a higher rate than the bank with the same kind of risk level, or a bit more risk but getting more reward? This is what I'm basing my investment decisions on, and that's what people really should be making their investment decisions on, is if I take my money out of the bank and invest it in something, what's the risk I'm taking and what's the return I'm getting for it? So I'm not too bothered about what the rate's doing. So let's have a look at some of the other fundamentals as well. So the other one is the Renters Reform Bill. So the Renters Reform Bill is getting shaken up. So the rental sector, I think this needs to happen, by the way. There's a lot of rogue landlords out there that take advantage of tenants, and they have poor standard properties and they just don't treat the tenants properly. But also it hurts the good landlords like us that have got good quality properties. And so some of the things the Rent Reform Bill is recently talking about and is potentially going to get put into place is no fault evictions. So you can't just serve notice to a tenant to get them out because you want them out. There's got to be certain reasons to get them out. Now again, wherever there's negative points and things like that, then there's usually positives that come from it. And if you've got this knowledge before it comes into place, then you can start to put things in place. So you can get rid of problem tenants before it comes in, start serving Section 21s on them, getting them out and getting decent tenants in that you're not going to have a problem getting out if you need to in the future. You can work with social housing providers. This is something we're doing a lot more of. We're actually going to give our properties to these social housing providers on long leases where they do all the repairs. You don't need any letting agents. You just give it to them for 7 to 10 years in some cases, and they pay the rent because it's backed by the UK government. They do all the repairs to the properties. You don't need any letting agencies, and they are really good tenancies as well. So that's some of the things you can do as well to counteract some of these changes that are potentially going to come in under the Rent Reform Bill. So you can have a look into that in a bit more detail. But they're three of the main things that are causing a lot of negativity around the buy-to-let property market at the moment: high inflation, interest rates, and the Rent Reform Bill. So let's have a look at where else can you put your money. So you could leave it in the bank. Right now some of the banks are paying some pretty decent rates. But the thing to remember, whilst inflation's going up and interest rates are also going up, with interest rates going up in particular, the banks are able to offer some quite good rates. But think what's going to happen when interest rates come back down. Because as quick as they've gone up, they are going to have to come back down as well. And if you look at market trends on this and economics in detail, you'll understand that they have to come back down to a more reasonable level. Now, they're not going to go back to how they were. They're not going to go back to zero. There's going to be a sort of a benchmark or a line that they're going to settle on, and it's probably going to be maybe about 4%. Nobody truly knows what it's going to be, but it could be 3.5–4% would be a more realistic target for interest rates. So that means when they come back down, then your interest with the banks is likely to come back down with it too. And are you really getting decent returns? I think there are ones I've seen online recently with Barclays, for example, maybe 5–6%, which isn't anything spectacular, I don't think. So, and you're leaving your money in the banks, and are the banks safe right now? We've had the bank, Silicon Valley Bank went bust and took a lot of other banks with it, and then they got amalgamated and swallowed up by a bigger bank. But this kind of makes you think, are banks really safe to leave your money in them? And you might have the protection of the FSCS scheme. But the problem with that is, if there is everybody trying to claim their money back, do you think there's going to be enough money to go around to pay everyone back if they all collapse? I don't know. So I don't really feel safe leaving all my money in the bank. The next one's crypto. You can make some staggering returns off cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and loads of other coins are out there. Obviously, it's very, very volatile and very high risk. So it's not really for me. I've had a bit of a play around with it, but it's not something particularly I want to focus on as my main investment. Gold, that's always done very, very well and always outperformed inflation. And it's a very solid investment. The thing I've always had the biggest problem with it is it doesn't pay you every month like property. So for me, gold isn't really something I want to invest in. Stocks. So if you invest in stocks or funds, they might produce you a return, but you don't own those companies. Somebody else does. Someone else is in charge of them. If you invest in an individual stock and something happens to that company, then you could potentially lose all of your money. So I find stocks quite risky, and you might get dividends, but generally you don't get cash flow every month from them unless you've got dividends from them. So this is why I'm not really edging towards stocks. As always, for me, it's been about property, because I've tried and tested lots of different businesses over the years, and nothing's provided the returns for me like property has. So why buy-to-let still works even in today's climate with high inflation and relatively high interest rates? Because rents are increasing. So whilst interest rates are going up, rents are also going up. So as they do that, it maintains your cash flow after you've paid your debt on the property, and you've got a surplus left after that rental income and less debt service and any other costs. You've still maintained cash flow margin. Now, there is going to come a point, obviously, when you've got to ask yourself, can the tenants afford to pay the rent? This is a good sort of question. So you've got to have a look over your portfolio and see who's in your properties, what kind of jobs they've got, and the people that you rent to. And you've got to make some decisions if you've got an existing portfolio. But if you're new to this and starting out, you're in a really good position, because you can take all this advice on board and make sure you're not going to make some damaging mistakes. And you want to make sure you're making solid investments and making cash flow and also capital appreciation as well. Inflation will drop at some point, and when it comes back down to a more realistic level, one of the important things that I find as well at the moment with all this negativity, I personally feel the next 18 months is a golden opportunity to build your portfolio. If you're starting right now, it's the best time to get in property. The two best times to get in property one was 20 years ago, and the second is today. Today is the best time to get involved with property investment if you haven't already, because it will outperform a lot of these other investments we've talked about on the previous page, simply because it's stood the test of time. They've been around for thousands of years, these properties, and it's very predictable what happens in market cycles. And right now in the market cycle, with high inflation, people are getting put off investing because a lot of people just don't know what they're doing. So they're sitting on their hands and they're thinking, right, I'm not going to buy anything or buy an investment. I'm getting put off property because I picked up a newspaper and it said that interest rates are going up, so I can't make any money. And this is the whole point here. It's not as simple as that. If you play it a business, if you treat a business like a hobby, you'll get paid like a hobby. If you treat it like a business, you should get paid like a business if you know what you're doing. So if you're buying properties today, you're getting them at really good prices, because when there's a lot of negativity, this is when you can pick up the best deals. But if you think, like going back 2 years ago when everything was going up, then you couldn't really get as good a deals then. We're finding much better deals now because people aren't as motivated to sell at a discount when things are going up. So it's really important that you buy all your really good properties now in the next 12 to 18 months. I feel that's going to be one of the best times to be investing in property, because house prices will always go up. If you look at history, look at house prices, house price index going back 20, 30 years. House prices in some areas of the UK double every 10 years. But let's say you've been really pessimistic and your portfolio doubled every 20 years or 30 years. You've held on to it for all that time, you've been paid every single month with cash flow, and it's gone up in value and doubled, and you've not had to do any extra work for that property. This is why I love property so much. You don't have to do any extra work, for that increase in value. It's just by holding the asset long term through the market cycles and getting the benefit of the appreciation as it goes up. Because the market is always driven by sentiment, people's attitude to risk, people's attitude to property and investing, and if you understand some of these things and the cycles you're in, this is where you can really profit and build a rock solid property portfolio. The next thing I like about property, which specifically you can't do with stocks and shares, you can't do it with, you might be able to do leverage with crypto. I believe you can do things like that with that asset class, but you can actually leverage your properties and produce tax-free cash. So when a property goes up in value, instead of selling it and crystallizing all the profit and you won't get paid again, keep it but refinance it and pull out capital. And when you refinance it, the capital you pull out is profit to keep in your pocket, and it's tax-free because it's classed as debt because you've leveraged the debt on the property. But it's just free money that you're pulling out the property and you're able to spend, go on holiday or buy more investments. And this is why I love property so much. There's so many things you can do that you can't do with other asset classes. So I want to cover a case study. Now it's important, we're in June 2023 right now, to give you a deal that's actually going on at the moment. This is due to complete, I believe, next week. And this is one of our partners deals. So we run the partner program with Fast Property Partners. If you want more details, it's in the description below. And by the way, don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button. Just helps us get a bit more exposure. So I'd really appreciate that. But I want to give you a case study of a deal that's going to complete imminently from one of the partners that's on board with us. So we're helping them build their portfolio in a safe way using all our methods and some of the things we talked about today. A rock solid asset base being one of them. So the purchase price, now this property is worth today £80,000. So it's worth £80,000, but we've got a seller who is fed up with the property, doesn't want to rent it out anymore for whatever reason. I can't remember the specifics on this one, but they've agreed to sell it quickly for £62,000. So today it's worth 80. So it's worth 80,000, and we secured it for £62,000. So it's a really deep discount, and this is the USP to our model. If you get properties under market value, if you're paying market value, you might as well just go and buy a property off Rightmove and rent it out. But the problem is you're going to trap all your money in there, and you're going to have to work really hard to build up a deposit for more properties, which takes people decades to build a portfolio. But if you do it with us in the partner program, we can help you shave off decades and years by doing it this way. So you get a property at a deep discount. So it's worth 80, pick it up for 62 today, a bargain. For a quick sale, you've got to complete generally inside 28 days. and that's why we're getting property at a deep discount. We're telling sellers, look, we can buy it really quickly if you're prepared to be flexible on the price, and we can complete inside 28 days. Because most people on Rightmove that are buying them with mortgages definitely can't complete inside 28 days. So we pick it up for 62. We've got some stamp duty land tax, so you can't get away with paying that unless there's exemptions. Some properties you can get exemptions from paying stamp duty land tax. And in this case, it's 1,860, which represents 3% of the purchase price. And that's what you'll pay as tax when you're purchasing it. You've got some legal fees there of £1,000 to buy the property. And then the next part is, this is done off bridging. So you might have cash, you might have 62,000 in cash or 70,000. But if you want to buy more property quickly and grow quickly, then you probably want to use bridging finance. Now, we're big fans of bridging. I've done other videos on this, so by all means check them out. But bridging is brilliant. It's short-term finance. It helps you get from A to B really quickly. You typically take this finance out for 6 to 12 months, and it's at a higher rate than a normal mortgage, generally because there's a bit more risk for the bridging companies because they're lending to you on properties that they don't know anything about. They do certain checks, but they're nowhere near as strict as mortgage lenders. They will lend you money on properties that are not mortgageable, whereas mortgage companies will not lend you on properties that have got, say, no working kitchen or bathroom, whereas bridging companies will. So this is why bridging is really good. But the main reason we use bridging is it can complete inside 28 days. So you're going to put some money in for your bridging. So like a mortgage, you would put in 25% deposit, which is 15,500. And then the bridging company are going to advance you 75% of the property's purchase price, which is 46,500. Now your deposit, your stamp duty, your legal fees, those costs come to initially, if you want to buy this property, you would need £18,360. Now the best thing is, that doesn't have to be your money. You might think, well, I want to build my portfolio, but I don't have that money. Well, you can put it on credit cards, you could get loans, low cost loans out. Now, I'm not advising you or anybody, I'm not giving any financial advice because I can't do that, but if I was building my portfolio and I'm buying property at a deep discount, if it's worth 80 and pick it up 62, you're going to beg, borrow and steal to get the money to buy this property, as long as your interest rate on the money you're borrowing is at a sensible level. And this comes back down to the point before where we said about interest rates at 5%. Is it high? It is or it isn't. Well, this is where you can get the context around that and actually start to do your calculations and see if it works or not at 5%. But in terms of the bridging interest, like I said, this is short-term finance, 6 to 12 months typically on this property. And you can either pay monthly interest or you can roll it up and they'll take it off at the start, so you don't actually pay anything monthly. So some of them, bridging companies, will give you the choice to do that. For this exercise, we've decided to just add the monthly costs up, and we'll cover that on the next part of this section. So, of the case study. So your input cost to take this property on would be £18,360 to buy the property, including your fees. You've got it under your control. It now rents out for £700 a month. You can get some cash flow coming in. Letting agency costs around about £70 per month. And running costs £45 per month. That factors in things like gas safety certificates and some of your compliance stuff that you have to do every year. So you've got the property under control, you've got it rented out, you've got some cash coming in. In 6 months' time, typically you have to wait 6 months because of the 6-month rule. You can look into that, but the 6-month rule is a guideline, and you don't have to. Most mortgage lenders adhere to the 6-month Council of Mortgage Lenders guidelines, which is you buy a property today, you've got to wait 6 months before you can refinance it. But some lenders don't. Some lenders will let you buy it, and within a month of ownership, they'll let you refinance it. And there's various lenders we know that do that. But you're only going to want to do that if you're going to add value to the property, if you need to refurbish it, for example, because the fact you've bought it at a discount won't be enough for a mortgage lender to say, oh yeah, we'll let you refinance in a month's time for 80,000. That's just not going to happen. So they'll just think that that's the new market value, and you'll just get your borrowing based off that. So it's really important you follow this process, which is to buy it at this price. If you're not doing any significant works, you're going to wait 6 months and you're going to refinance. Now when you refinance off your bridge, you're going to refinance at the market value. So let's just say house prices haven't gone up in 6 months. You just refinance at the market value, which is £80,000. Now we know it's worth £80,000 because we've done our due diligence before we bought it. We knew it was worth £80,000. You speak to local agents, go online. It's very easy with the types of properties we buy. It's very straightforward to value properties generally because there's lots of these types of properties, investment properties, and they usually sell for the same kind of figures. So you're going to refinance it in 6 months' time for £80,000. The mortgage company, so you're going to get a normal mortgage on it. A normal mortgage company is going to lend you £60,000. Now, if you remember, your bridge was 46,500. So when the mortgage company lends you the 60, after paying the bridge off, you've got a surplus, and that's what we'll come on to. So with your mortgage, you'll have some arrangement fees, typically 2%, which is 1,200. Your mortgage payments based on today's actual mortgages that are available, 5.5% interest only, fixed for 5 years. There's other products available, and some people might prefer repayment, but we're a big fan of interest only because it maximises your cash flow, and we let the asset go up in value so we can refinance. We don't need to worry generally about repayment or paying off the debt right now. People have different views on that, but that's my approach, is to get interest only mortgages. And then your bridging costs. So remember, you had the bridge for 6 or 7 months. You add up the cost of the money to borrow it, and over that period it's about £2,821 in terms of interest and costs for the bridge. So you remember, you put in 18,360, factoring in the bridge costs as well, your cash back from this deal. So once you refinance it, you're going to get 13,500 back from your initial starting pot of 18,360. So if you borrowed 18,360 and you had to pay it back in 6 months, then this isn't a deal for you, because you're going to have a shortfall, because you're going to leave some money left in the deal. So the money you've left in is basically the bridge costs, because that's your finance costs that you've initially borrowed. So you're leaving the money in, and then also there's a little bit extra you've left in as well, because you haven't got your full cost back out. Because I mean, the deeper the discount you get for your property, the more you're going to get back through a cash back through refinancing. So you need to drive that purchase price down if you want to get all of your money back out. But in this day and age, in this particular market, these are brilliant deals, because, and I say to people, don't expect to get all of your cash back out or get paid on top, because going back to 2008, just before the 2007, 2006, before the crash, people were doing these deals with big discounts, and then you were getting all your money back and getting paid on top. They're going on holidays or buying new cars, and then what happened is it all come crashing down. People lost all their portfolios because they weren't treating it like a business. So don't be hell-bent on getting all of your money back. In this climate we're in, it's all down to that return on investment and what you're going to get for taking the money out of the bank and putting it into this property. Now in this case, because you're getting a net cash flow of £304.50, that equates to a 47% return on capital employed. Now how you get to that figure, and that's the only figure I ever work off, the return on capital employed, and for me it has to be over minimum of 15% or above, because I know I'm not getting that in any bank account. And I can tell you right now, you're not getting 47% in any bank account that I know of. If you do know of any, then put it in the comments box below. But I can tell you right now, there's no bank account that pays 47% return on your capital that you've put into it. And this, again, is why I always come back to property and why I like it. So 47% return. How I've got to that figure, by the way, and if you want to work out return on capital employed, very simple. You take the net cash flow of a property after costs, debt service, any other associated costs, letting agency fees, running costs, what you've got left, £304.50 times 12, divided by the money you've left in the deal, which is 7,681, times by 100 gives you your return on capital employed. Now that may well fluctuate, because we don't know if a boiler's going to break in the year, and that wipes out, quite a bit of profit. It might cost £1,000, £1,500 to replace a boiler, in which case that return on capital employed is going to go down a little bit. But remember, every year this is going to pay you every single year for the rest of your life or for as long as you hold this asset for. And this is why, again, why I love property, why I always come back to property, because of the capital growth, the cash flow, and the returns you get off property. So I think I've simplified it best I can. If anyone's unsure on anything, drop a comment below in the box. I'll try and explain it a bit better. But this is a live deal that's going on now in June 2023. So this is based on 5.5% interest. Would you do a deal, getting your money out the bank, 18,360, putting into this deal for 6 or 7 months, and then refinancing, pull out 13,500 and leaving in the deal 7,681. That includes your bridge cost. Don't forget that's been factored in to the money left in, because obviously that's a cost that you need to get back. And your net cash flow is £304.50, and it gives you a 47% return on capital employed. Those deals we do all day long just because they make sense. Now there's other things behind this. You need to know, what you're buying. If this was on a flat, I'd be a bit nervous, because you're going to have things like service charges are going to go up all the time. They always go up, and that's going to impact on your returns. So not a big fan of them, obviously, as we know, because I've talked about this many times before. But houses, at least 2-bedroom houses, tenants stay longer, and you don't have as many voids, which means it protects that return on capital. So I think you get the point, and this has answered the question really. Buy-to-let for me is still a very much viable and sustainable long-term investment. But remember, it's what the media sensationalising, and it's great for us because this is where we can get the best deals, because sellers want to get rid of properties and we can get them at really good prices. So the top tips to finish off is have a strict criteria to follow, because it's really important you don't just go out there and buy any property, because they're not all going to work. If you do the numbers I did on the last page and you stress test them and you plan for interest rates going up, we've factored all that in, then this is what you've got to do. You've got to get the right properties that are going to cash flow in the right area. It's going to attract the right tenants. So there's a complete recipe to all this. Also have a mixed portfolio. Don't just have buy-to-lets in your portfolio. Go for HMOs, mixed-use buildings. That way you've got some commercial exposure as well, because you've got shops down below, flats above. You've also got stamp duty benefits, things like that. And also you can put the commercial part of the building into your pension if you wish. So this is why I like a mixed portfolio, and generally you can get higher yields and higher returns on HMOs and mixed-use buildings as well. But if you're starting out, you want some buy-to-lets under your belt, just normal buy-to-lets. That way you're classed as an experienced landlord. You can't just go straight to HMOs and mixed use just because you want cash flow, where you don't have the experience. The lenders aren't going to touch you. Some lenders might, but they're going to charge you more money and you'll have to put more deposits in and stuff. So start with some buy-to-lets and then work up from there. SPV, so special purpose vehicle, fancy name for a limited company. Generally people put them in an SPV. Get your own financial advice on this, but generally most people put them in SPVs so that you can avoid some of the nasty costs. If you hold them personally, there's something called Section 24, which means you can't offset the interest part of your mortgage against a rental income, whereas if you put it into an SPV, you can, and you get that benefit, so you can sidestep that tax change. So this is where we're becoming more profitable, where old school landlords, if they're just not educating themselves anymore, they're going to want to sell up and get rid of the properties because they're no longer making money. But we're in this business day in, day out, and we know all these ways to make sure we're staying efficient and profitable. But get expert guidance. So when you buy properties, you need finance experts, you need legal team, you need tax specialists, and ultimately you need deals as well. You need deeply discounted deals, because you're not going to be able to find deals like that. I've just shared with you that case study on Rightmove. You're not going to be able to phone up an estate agent and say, oh, the property's worth 80, would you accept 62? There's an art of negotiation. We know where to find these deals, we know how to speak to the sellers, we know how to get them at the right price. And we're certainly not taking advantage of them. They accept the offers. We say to them, look, we're investors. In return for a fast sale, we can give you X amount. But if you don't want it, by all means, you can put it on Rightmove and wait 6 months for it to go through or longer. But if they want the certainty, this is where people come to us, and in return, we want a bit of a deal. Again, we're in business. We need to be able to make money. And finally, just finishing off, the best time to buy property was 20 years ago. But the next best time is today. You might have heard that before, but it's a really good quote to stand by, because get involved with property, don't put it off a second longer. Get in touch with us in the comments below. There's some links in there and some more information. But I'll speak to you all soon on the next video.